It was a crisp autumn evening when the news first broke out. Jonathan had just wrapped up filming the final scene of a highly anticipated television drama, his smile wide and his heart full of gratitude for the accolades that poured in from every corner of the nation. His wife, Cassandra, once a leading actress known for her mesmerizing screen presence, had long since retired from the spotlight to embrace the quieter, albeit no less demanding, role of a housewife. In the public's eyes, she had traded glitz and glamour for the comfort of domesticity. Yet behind the facade of a serene suburban life, Cassandra's eyes hid unspoken sorrow and secrets that she had carefully locked away. That fateful night, as Jonathan returned home in his sleek, black car, a symbol of the success he had worked so hard to achieve, he felt an inexplicable chill run down his spine. The usually welcoming lights of their sprawling mansion were dimmed, and a palpable silence greeted him at the door. There was no sign of the warm laughter, no familiar aroma of home-cooked meals, only an eerie void that seemed to scream of something amiss. His heart pounded as he moved through the corridors, calling out for Cassandra, the voice of a woman who had once been his partner in both love and life. But the only response was the hollow echo of his own questions. It wasn't long before the police arrived. The investigation commenced with all the precision and urgency of a well-rehearsed drama. Detectives combed through every corner of the house, scrutinizing every detail, from the half-open window in the study to the scattered personal belongings in the living room. Jonathan's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of the night, and the dreadful realization dawned on him. Cassandra had been taken, and there were no signs of struggle, no traces of forced entry. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and an ocean of despair. In the days that followed, the media swirled with speculation, each headline more sensational than the last. Jonathan, once a beloved TV star, suddenly found himself thrust into a nightmare from which he could not awaken. The once familiar faces of adoring fans turned into a blur of pity and scrutiny. Whispers of scandal and rumors of hidden affairs began to circulate, painting a picture of a man whose personal life was as scripted as the dramas he once starred in. Yet, deep in his heart, Jonathan knew that nothing could be further from the truth. Cassandra had been the embodiment of love and loyalty, a partner who had stood by him through every rise and fall. So who could have orchestrated such a cruel deception? As the investigation unfolded, a series of perplexing clues began to emerge. In the early hours of the morning, a single cryptic text message had been sent to Jonathan's phone. It read simply, "The truth lies beneath the illusion." At first, he had dismissed it as the ramblings of a desperate mind. But as he retraced Cassandra's last known movements, a disturbing pattern began to take shape. Surveillance footage from a nearby street revealed a shadowy figure lingering around the mansion's perimeter, and forensic experts discovered traces of an uncommon cologne that did not belong to anyone in Jonathan's inner circle. Among the list of potential suspects, one name began to rise above the rest, a name that Jonathan had fought hard to keep buried in the recesses of his heart. Isabella, a strikingly beautiful woman with an enigmatic allure, had been Jonathan's secret paramour for nearly 2 years. Their clandestine meetings had been hidden beneath layers of deceit and passion, each encounter more fervent and forbidden than the last. Isabella was everything that Cassandra was not: daring, impulsive, and consumed by a hunger for both power and wealth. And as Jonathan's world crumbled around him, the possibility that Isabella could be involved in Cassandra's disappearance grew ever more insistent. It wasn't until a chance conversation with an old friend, an investigative journalist with a knack for uncovering the truth, that Jonathan began to suspect that the answer to his anguish might lie in the unlikeliest of places. This journalist, known only as Marcus, had always been drawn to the undercurrents of scandal that swirled around the entertainment industry. In hushed tones over late-night coffee, Marcus revealed that he had been digging into a series of financial irregularities involving high-profile figures. "There's money changing hands," he confided, his eyes dark with conspiratorial intensity. "And not just any money, enough to turn the lives of those involved upside down. Marcus's words reverberated in Jonathan's mind long after their conversation ended. Could it be that Cassandra's kidnapping was not the work of a random criminal, but a calculated scheme engineered by someone with intimate knowledge of Jonathan's personal life? Someone who understood that the lure of money could corrupt even the purest of hearts? The evidence began to mount, and as Jonathan pored over every detail, a startling realization emerged. The kidnapping had been orchestrated by none other than Isabella, his own secret lover. Driven by greed and the desire for financial gain, Isabella had devised an intricate plan to hold Cassandra for ransom, a plan that would simultaneously serve as a means to extricate herself from the tangled web of their illicit affair. The discovery shattered Jonathan's already fragile world. The woman who had once promised him endless devotion was nothing more than a master manipulator, a siren who had used his trust to weave a tapestry of lies. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound he had ever suffered. Yet even as his heart broke, a spark of determination ignited within him. He resolved to see justice done, not just for Cassandra, but for the sanctity of a truth that had been so callously violated. With renewed vigor, Jonathan began to work alongside the police, determined to bring Isabella to account for her crimes. The detectives, led by the astute Inspector Reynolds, a man whose career had been built on unraveling the most labyrinthine of mysteries, sensed that they were on the cusp of uncovering something monumental. Reynolds was a veteran of the force, known for his relentless pursuit of justice and his uncanny ability to decipher the subtlest clues. As he led his team through a series of tense interrogations and painstaking forensic analyses, a pattern emerged that linked the ransom demands to a network of offshore accounts, suggesting that Isabella had been funneling money to unknown entities in exchange for her silence. Every step of the investigation was fraught with danger and uncertainty. Late one night, as Jonathan sat alone in the darkened study of his mansion, the silence was broken by the sharp ring of the telephone. It was an anonymous tip, a single voice on the other end of the line, barely audible over the static, urging him to look beneath the surface. The cryptic message was a grim reminder that in this game of deception, every secret had its price, and every revelation came at a cost. With mounting trepidation and a resolute heart, Jonathan followed the trail that led him into the underbelly of the city, where shadows whispered secrets and the line between friend and foe blurred into obscurity. In the dim glow of a rundown bar on the outskirts of town, Jonathan met with an informant whose eyes darted nervously between the entrance and his trembling hands. "They're all in on it," the informant hissed, his voice quivering with fear. "Isabella isn't the mastermind. She's just a pawn in a much larger scheme. The money, the power, the control, it's all orchestrated by someone who's been pulling the strings from the very beginning." The informant's words sent a shiver down Jonathan's spine. Could it be that his entire life had been manipulated by unseen forces, and that the betrayal he had felt was only the tip of an enormous iceberg of corruption and deceit? With every new clue, the tension mounted. Inspector Reynolds' investigation led him to a clandestine meeting between financial executives and shadowy figures in a derelict warehouse near the docks. Under the guise of darkness, deals were being made, deals that implicated not only Isabella, but several high-ranking individuals within the entertainment industry and beyond. The intricate web of conspiracy stretched far wider than anyone had dared to imagine, and the stakes were unimaginably high. In one such heart-pounding moment, as Reynolds and his team prepared to make a decisive arrest, a firefight erupted in the narrow corridors of the warehouse. Bullets ricocheted off cold metal, and the shouts of startled henchmen mingled with the frantic commands of the police. It was chaos incarnate, a maelstrom of violence and desperation that threatened to swallow everything in its path. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a singular moment of clarity emerged. In the midst of the chaos, a desperate cry for mercy rang out, one that belonged to Isabella herself. Caught in the crossfire of her own treachery, she was taken into custody by the relentless Inspector Reynolds. As she was led away in handcuffs, Her once cool composure gave way to panic and regret. In that moment, the facade of the seductive temptress crumbled, revealing a vulnerable woman consumed by greed and fear. The shocking arrest sent ripples throughout the community, and the media, ever hungry for scandal, pounced on the story with relentless fervor. For Jonathan, however, the arrest of Isabella was only the beginning of a long, painful journey towards truth and redemption. In the days that followed, as the police painstakingly pieced together the fragments of the conspiracy, Jonathan was forced to confront the raw, unvarnished reality of his own life. The betrayal by the woman he had secretly loved, the abduction of his beloved wife, and the realization that his world had been manipulated by forces far more sinister than he could have ever imagined. All of it weighed heavily upon his soul. Yet in the quiet moments of introspection, he began to understand that sometimes, in the midst of overwhelming darkness, a spark of hope could be found in the most unexpected places. Inspector Reynolds, with his trademark steely resolve and a keen sense of justice, continued to unravel the intricate tapestry of deceit. Late-night interrogations, covert surveillance, and painstaking forensic work slowly began to expose the vast network behind the abduction. Every revelation, every intercepted phone call, every bank transaction became a vital piece of the puzzle. And as the layers of conspiracy were peeled back, it became increasingly clear that the mastermind behind the entire scheme was not merely driven by greed, but by a thirst for power that transcended the confines of ordinary criminality. This revelation sent shockwaves through the community of the elite, a world where the glittering facade of fame and fortune masked the rotting core of corruption. The trial that followed was a media sensation, a courtroom drama that captivated the nation. Under the glare of relentless flashbulbs and the scrutinizing eyes of the public, Isabella's confession was laid bare. Yet, even as she admitted to orchestrating Cassandra's kidnapping for a hefty ransom, she maintained that she was but a pawn in a much larger game, a game where the rules had been written by those who lurked in the shadows of power. Jonathan, standing in the courtroom with a heavy heart, listened to her every word with a mixture of anguish and grim determination. The betrayal was now a public spectacle, a narrative of greed, lust, and the inexorable consequences of unchecked ambition. As the courtroom drama unfolded, the layers of deception became even more entangled. Testimonies from former insiders revealed that the money demanded for Cassandra's safe return had been funneled into offshore accounts managed by a consortium of influential figures. These revelations ignited a firestorm of public outrage, and calls for further investigations grew louder by the day. For Jonathan, the pain of losing his wife was compounded by the betrayal of a system that had allowed such treachery to fester beneath the surface. Yet, amid the clamor for justice, he found solace in the knowledge that truth, however painful, would ultimately prevail. In the final, breathtaking moments of the trial, as the verdict was read and justice seemed to inch closer to a semblance of balance, Jonathan took a deep, shuddering breath. The journey had been long and harrowing, a descent into a world where love was manipulated, trust was shattered, and the line between victim and perpetrator blurred into obscurity. But as the courtroom erupted in murmurs of relief and condemnation, he felt a glimmer of hope. The arrest of Isabella and the subsequent unmasking of the shadowy figures behind the conspiracy marked not an end, but a beginning, a chance to rebuild what had been lost and to forge a future untainted by the bitterness of betrayal. Outside the courthouse, as the rain began to fall once again, a symbolic cleansing of the sins of the past, Jonathan stood alone for a moment, looking up at the vast, indifferent sky. The journey towards healing would be long, and the scars of this dark chapter would remain etched in his heart forever. Yet, he also recognized that in the face of such overwhelming darkness, the resilience of the human spirit was nothing short of miraculous. Cassandra's disappearance, the heartbreak of betrayal, and the turbulent path to justice had all led him to a place of painful clarity, a realization that life, in all its complexity, was a mosaic of sorrow and hope, of loss and redemption. In the days that followed, as Inspector Reynolds, and his dedicated team continued to dismantle the criminal network that had almost thrown the world into chaos. Jonathan dedicated himself to the memory of his wife. He set up a foundation in Cassandra's name, a beacon of hope for those who had suffered similar injustices, a reminder that even in the face of unspeakable cruelty, the human heart could find a way to heal and to love again. The foundation quickly became a symbol of resilience, a rallying cry for truth and compassion in an era where deception reigned supreme. Every time Jonathan visited the modest building that housed the foundation's offices, a converted warehouse that now buzzed with the energy of volunteers and survivors, he was reminded of the countless lives that had been touched by his wife's kindness and strength. The walls, once cold and desolate, now resonated with laughter, shared stories of survival, and the promise of a better tomorrow. And though Cassandra's absence was a wound that would never fully heal, the memory of her radiant spirit became a guiding light for all who sought to rise above the darkness. Inspector Reynolds, too, found himself transformed by the events that had unfolded. Known for his unyielding determination and a reputation built on cracking the most impenetrable cases, he had been forced to confront not only the underbelly of organized crime, but also the fragility of the human condition. In quiet moments after the chaos had subsided, he would reflect on the intricate dance of fate and free will that had brought him face to face with such heartache. His resolve to root out corruption had never been stronger, and he made a solemn vow to ensure that no one else would be forced to endure the torment that Jonathan and Cassandra had suffered. Months turned into years, and the memory of Cassandra's kidnapping slowly receded from the collective consciousness of the public. Yet, in the quiet corners of Jonathan's heart and in the determined eyes of Inspector Reynolds, the events of that fateful time remained indelible, a stark reminder of the cost of betrayal and the power of redemption. The foundation flourished, expanding its reach to help victims of domestic violence, financial exploitation, and other forms of abuse, a living testament to the enduring legacy of a woman whose life had been unjustly cut short by greed and treachery. And so, as the sun rose over a city that had learned to balance its glittering facades with the harsh realities of the world beneath, Jonathan Pryce continued his journey, a journey marked by loss and regret, but also by hope and the promise of renewal. His story, once a tale of fame and fortune, had transformed into an epic saga of resilience and rebirth, a narrative woven from the threads of love, betrayal, and the unbreakable human spirit. In the quiet moments of reflection, Jonathan would often return to that pivotal night when the world had shattered around him, when the truth had been unmasked and the cruel tapestry of deception laid bare. He remembered the cold dread that had seeped into his bones, the piercing silence that had greeted him as he searched for Cassandra, and the overwhelming grief that had threatened to drown him in despair. Yet he also remembered the courage that had driven him to seek justice, the unwavering determination that had compelled him to confront not only the villains who had wrought havoc on his life, but also the darker parts of his own soul. Now, standing at the crossroads of memory and destiny, Jonathan looked out over the city, a city that had witnessed his rise to stardom, his fall into despair, and his eventual rebirth. The bright neon lights and bustling streets, once a constant reminder of the fleeting nature of fame, now symbolized the endless possibilities that lay ahead. He knew that the scars of the past would remain, etched into his very being, but he also recognized that these scars were proof of his survival, a testament to the resilience that defined him. The tale of Jonathan Pryce, Cassandra's disappearance, and the shocking betrayal by the woman he had secretly loved became a legend whispered in hushed tones in both the corridors of power and the back alleys of the city. It was a story that served as a cautionary tale, a reminder that in a world where trust can be shattered in an instant, the line between hero and villain is often blurred. And yet, in that very uncertainty, there was a spark of hope, a hope that truth, no matter how deeply buried, would eventually come to light, and that justice, though often delayed, would ultimately prevail. Thus, dear listener, as you journey through your own labyrinth of joys and sorrows, remember the story of Jonathan Pryce, a story of love and loss, of betrayal and redemption, and of the enduring power of the human spirit to rise above even the most devastating of tragedies. Let his tale remind you that even in the darkest moments, when the shadows of deceit loom large, there is always the possibility of renewal, of transformation, and of a future where hope triumphs over despair. This is not just a story of a TV actor whose life was ripped apart by treachery, nor is it merely the tale of a kidnapping that shook a world built on illusion and fame. It is at its core a testament to the strength of the human heart, a reminder that even when those we trust most betray us, we can still find the courage to rebuild, to forgive, and ultimately, to love again. And so, as the city lights flicker like distant memories and the ceaseless hum of life continues its eternal dance, take a moment to remember the lessons etched into every page of this dark and compelling saga. For in the end, every heartbreak, every betrayal, every act of retribution is but a chapter in the never-ending story of our existence, a story that, despite all its twists and turns, continues to unfold with the promise of a brighter tomorrow.